Vuoi? Mettiamo qui.
Ah, grazie.
Do you want to give your presentation?
Yes. Yes.
Collegato a tutti i quadri.
Adesso te lo metto su una... Voglio solo vedere se mi...
Aspetta un attimo che la stavo...
Se no me la... Grazie.
Questo direttore.
Doppia porta.
Il visuale, yes.
Ma quando ti compri un Mac?
Sì, la vita cambia prospettiva. Lo so. Però non torni mai più indietro, neanche un po'.
Vedi, c'è il compito di estimo. Quindi estimo 090626 versione stampa.
Prima.
Te lo ricordi, Market? Questi fare.
Vedi che arrivano sempre le domande a trabocchetto. Già pagina.
C'è una sessione della morte.
È la nostra. Quella è divisa in 3 parti.
Sì, sono 3 blocchi.
Quindi come ho fatto su economico Citizen Science, è sempre vostro.
Su?
Citizen Science, delle 4 delle...
Ok. Poi se proviamo solo perché è un video.
Se è la sessione che modera Market, è sempre nostro. C'è un marcatore nuovo. Sì. Ah, ok, sì, è di Chiara. No, Paolo, sì.
Tu sei di Cagliari? Che confusione, l'assistenza tecnica da Cagliari.
Come video nella presentazione?
Sì.
Io facevo.
With this one.
Ah, siete insieme. E poi si vedono le note solo per capire. C'è una modalità...
No, it's possible to see the notes.
They can change the
Yeah.
C'è un motivo per cui non mi PC.
Okay.
Where did it go?
Oh, l'iPad.
Oh,
Ecco.
I can see my video, and then if it's possible to see the notes.
Yes, you will be able to see. Ah, yes.
But the others, they are not seeing also the notes.
No, they are not.
Brava, bravissima.
But they must be able to see the slideshow. That's
We cannot
If you
do, we have
can
some
want
colleagues.
to try, there is Alessia that is connected, so we can make a test.
who's connected? Sorry.
Alessia.
Someone.
Yes.
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes. You?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Vedono io.
Hai ragione. Vabbè, sono stanco, dai.
Lui infatti,
Vabbè, qui mi prendono in giro.
Perché
Chiedi
parliamo in inglese?
se vede le slide.
Sì, mi
Vedi le
sentite?
slide?
Mi sentite?
Can you hear us?
Good morning. Yes, we can. Hi, Marco.
Hi. Hi, Elisabetta. Ok. Yeah.
Okay, the only problem is that your
No, ti
slideshow
sentiamo.
is not able to come here.
Why
Is
not?
the audience okay
No.
with the
It's a little
No.
bit small, yeah.
But if you click on this, and
Non lo so.
here,
Ok.
Oh, ecco.
This is the video.
Prova a parlare.
Scusa, come va avanti qua?
No, non ti sentiamo. Lo so. Because we cannot hear them from home if they speak.
We just heard someone.
So we talk
Ah,
about.
no.
No?
Now I heard your voice through the phone, so I think.
Thank you.
No, ma non li sentiamo da casa, Fede.
Did they unmute themselves?
Yes, she's unmuted if you see Alessia.
Yes, okay.
ma solo lei non ci sente.
No, gli altri sentiranno le nostre voci.
Allora,
Lo so.
ma è lei che ha un problema, lei like freeze.
Can we ask
Sì,
someone else?
forse è un problema tuo. Vane, ci sei?
Sì, ci sono. Ciao a
Ah,
tutti.
ok, allora sì, è
Molto
un
bene,
problema.
vi vedo.
Vabbè, ciao, ciao.
Okay, so we can start. Yes. So good morning, everyone, and welcome to our workshop, Building Multidimensional Model for Detecting Complex Environmental System. So this workshop is organized into 3 sessions today, 1 this morning and 2 sessions this afternoon. This workshop is chaired by Vanessa Summa from the University of Bologna, Caterina Capioni and myself, Federico Dell'Anna from Politecnico di Torino, Giulia D'Altola, Marco Del Lobo, and Marco Rossetti from Politecnico di Milano. Who is co-chairing this first part of the workshop with me today. About the organization of this session, it is an hybrid session. We have 4 presentations in present and 1 virtual. We have 15 minutes for the presentation and a few minutes after for some questions, comments, and suggestions. So let's begin with our first speaker, Chiara La Rosa from Politecnico di Milano. Thank you. Dottor Manellino, please. No? The title of the presentation is an integrated methodological framework for human well-being assessment, an application to the city of Syracuse, Italy, and was proposed by Chiara La Rosa, Francesca Torrieri, and Marco Rossi. Please,
Good morning, everyone. As said, I'm Chiara La Rosa, a student from Polytechnic of Milano. And this study was developed in my bachelor thesis in progettazione e architettura under the supervision of Marco Rossi and Francesca Torrieri. The starting point of this study is the growing centrality of the concept of urban well-being and the quality of life in the planning agenda. And urban well-being is a complex and multidimensional concept, and it cannot be evaluated as it was in the past, as the economic growth, the physical development, or average income. But nowadays, we should consider a lot of other dimensions and how residents can live in healthy and safe environments, move efficiently, and benefit from urban opportunities in an equitable way. So there's the need for appropriate knowledge bases and assessment tools to support the livability-oriented decision at the urban level. And for this reason, the paper aims to provide an integrated methodological framework to assess well-being at the suburban level, supporting more oriented planning decision to orient it toward justice and livability. So this presentation is structured into 4 main parts. So first, I will briefly introduce the conceptual and planning foundation of urban well-being. Then I will present an integrated methodological framework, its application to the case study of Syracuse, and finally, the final results, the limitation, and future perspectives. So urban well-being is understood as the city ability to offer healthy, safe, stimulating, and inclusive living conditions, considering both physical morphology and social processes affecting resident life patterns. And this interpretation is connected to 3 main planning paradigms, which are the 15-minute city, the city of need, and the just city. The view of well-being of the first one, the 15-minute city, focus on proximity to daily services. So in which like daily needs can be reached within a short walking or cycling distance. The second one, the view of well-being of the city of needs, focus on improving living conditions of disadvantaged groups through inclusive and participatory planning. And the third one is its view of well-being is emphasize the fair distribution of resources and social inclusion through a normative orientation towards just outcomes. So although all these 3 planning paradigms show like a different way of view of well-being and a different planning logic, they all share a common challenge, which is recognizing the complex and the multidimensional nature of urban well-being, while focusing on its distribution mechanism across different urban areas. And to try to assess urban well-being, we decided to create an integrated methodological framework, thanks to doing a systematic literature review using the PISMA protocol, which identified at the end 10 different studies. And this review of these 10 studies highlighted the recurring different dimensions. The first one is the environmental one, which plays a really central role. Also, health and safety are considered cornerstone of well-being. The socioeconomic dimension is relevant as well, together with housing condition, accessibility, relational access, and also community dimension. From a methodological point of view, there was an importance to the convergence towards multidimensional aspects and composite images. But it was also relevant and really important the integration between objective indicators and subjective measure of satisfaction, because urban well-being cannot be only captured only through measurable data, but neither it can be assessed only through individual perception. So based on these findings, it was conducted the integrated methodological framework, which integrates two complementary approaches. The first one, the quantitative and data-based approach, measure urban well-being as the availability of urban services using official data, geo-referenced information, statistical analysis, and geoprocessing operation. And its main output is the spatialized urban well-being composite index, while on the other side we have the qualitative and perception-based approach, and it tends to understand the resident perception of urban service quality based on lived experience, opinions, and perception. And the final output is the overall urban well-being assessment. In simple terms, so the quantitative and database approach tell us what is available, and the qualitative component tell us how residents perceive what is available. And it's really like an important perception, because a purely like physical presence of a service does not necessarily mean that residents can use it or perceive it in a positive way. So going into more detail, the quantitative and database approach starts with the definition of the elementary spatial unit for the evaluation. The spatial unit is a square cell of 1 kilometer by 1 kilometer, which is coherent with the logic of proximity and also with the planning paradigms, especially the 15-minute city. And for each cell, the assessment considers service amenity located in the cell itself, but also of the 8 other adjacent cells. And neighboring services are also included in the operation because the urban well-being doesn't stop at the geometric boundary of a grid cell. However, these adjacent cells are considered with a lower proximity weight. The second step is the definition of the 7 main categories of amenity and services, which it was inspired from a paper reviewed in the Systematic Literature Review. And they are restaurant, transport, healthcare, education, sports, shopping, and nature. And these categories represent key dimensions of everyday urban life. The third step is the classification of urban services within each category into 4 sub-levels of importance. So primary, secondary, tertiary, and additional. And the logic is that all the amenities does not contribute to urban well-being in the same way. So the primary services represent essential and basic needs for residents. Secondary and tertiary provide like additional amenities. An additional one represent like all the variety of amenities presented in an area. The first step is then for each category, it is defined the urban well-being sub-index as the weighted contribution, as the sum of the weighted contribution of each sub-level. And at the end, we have the overall urban index, which is basically the arithmetic mean of these 7 main categories. And the value ranges from 0 to 10. Then the quantitative value are complemented with the qualitative and database perception-based approach, which is based in a resident questionnaire. So residents were asked to evaluate their satisfaction about the quality of the same 7 categories evaluated in the quantitative index. So this enables the direct comparison between an objective value from the resident evaluation and perception. Then, so this framework was applied and it was tested to a case study, in this case Siracusa. Why? In general, this is a city located in the in the southeast of Sicily, in the southern Italy, and it is a medium Italian-sized city with approximately 120,000 residents, and it represents a strong territorial variety with a dense historical center, semi-center neighborhoods, detached settlement, the peripheral areas, but also low density and agricultural areas. So it was like a good testing ground for testing this framework. The data sources were OpenStreetMap for urban amenities and services, ISTAT census for the resident population, and all the operations were carried out in QGIS. The municipal territory was divided into a regular grid of 1 kilometer cell, and each cell was associated with the number of services per category and level, and with the resident population. So for each cell, we calculated the overall urban well-being index and every category sub-index. Talking about the results, as we can see, the results showed the Siracusa as a market center periphery gradient. So I values are concentrated in the urban central area, especially in Ortigia and Neapolis, while moving over the urban core, the urban well-being values progressively decrease. And you can see a strong spatial imbalance between a few advantage area and the rest of municipality. Also, Siracusa can be seen as a polarized city, so with a strong multifunctional center, a semi-center belt with medium service availability, and then a poorly served outer ring. We can move to the comparison between the quantitative values and the perception-based one, with the resident questionnaire that gave us 54 responses to the questionnaire. I want to say that even if it is a limited sample, it should be like recognized as a preliminary and exploratory study. So the main responses were from three main neighborhoods, which are Nagradina, Neapolis, and Scala Greca. We can see the first comparison, which is the comparison from the overall perception-based urban well-being from the resident, which is 5.3, compared with the quantitative and data-based urban well-being value, which is 6.7. In general, this comparison showed a weak correlation and limited correspondence between data-based and perception-based measure of urban well-being, and we can see a significant deviation emerging from some categories evaluated. And as we can see, some example from the nature index, which it gave us 6.1 from a quantitative values and 4 from a qualitative one, and an even more weak correlation there is in the transport way. So in a quantitative, the quantitative value was 9.2, while the qualitative one is 3.7. As we can see, there's like a really not corresponded value, just because a transport service cannot a good the presence of a transport services does not necessarily mean that can use it or it was used it or perceived it good in a good way from a resident. So factors such as frequency, comfort, service quality, and reliability is really important and can affect and influence a lot to our resident perception and evaluation. To conclude, so this paper proposed an integrated methodological framework and compared database and perception-based to assess urban well-being, and its application to Siracusa, it's a potentiality to detect intra-urban inequalities, imbalance and inequalities, but also to let us identify and understand where are like the fragile areas and in general the problems. However, this framework has also some limits, because the quantitative urban well-being index currently focus on availability and proximity to services, excluding the social and environmental variables such as factors of urban safety, air quality, but also the noise. And also, its effectiveness depends on the availability and the quality of the data that we have. From a way of future perspective, future research, we can enrich the index with new indicators to fill the current gap, but also to strengthening the qualitative and perception based. We can involve in general more citizens, but also ask them to select and weighting relevant dimension for the urban well-being. And also we can investigate alternative spatial pattern and selection methods such as an hexagonal grid, which can be more correct to evaluate the urban well-being index. And in general, also applying this framework to other cities, to other urban areas, and testing its opportunity for scalability. Thank you for your attention.
Yeah. Any questions from the audience? Line?
So thank you. It was very clear. So congratulations, according to the fact that it's a bachelor thesis. We're impressed. I have a question. So let's suppose that this index is recognized as a good index. So the public administration said that this is a good index for us. So how do you think it could be used by the public administration? Who is going to do it? To develop this model and doing it and apply it? And how they are going to use it in order to plan the development of services and so on, if you have any idea about possible application?
Yeah, in general, if we can see also like the results, I think it should be in general a good way to starting to understand what is the problem and what missing the city has. But I think a really important thing is to communicate with the people who are living in the city to understand better what is the problem. So there should be a really integration between these two data. So the measurable data you can see clearly what can be the problem, what can be from a number, because it's a number from a scale to 0 to 10. More or less, I think you can understand what is the problem, but there should be an integration with talking with all the people who are living there, because if you don't talk with the people, I think there's no.
If I can add something, we can say that this is the idea of having this kind of tool and also a kind of busy user-friendly visualization, how to place it at the ground of policy decisions. Of course, this is somehow has a middle level of detail because has a certain degree of granularity that is given by this cells, but of course it highlights some dynamics that then need to be deepened to understand how to orient those decisions. So the idea is that, of course, in this case we deal with the criticality that often we have the municipality administration, so have not to do with this kind of. But then we can say that this is a kind, maybe it is our role as a university to support them. This can be a layer ground, a knowledge ground, with basis for developing decisions.
Any other question from home? I don't think so.
Okay, thank you, Chiara.
Thank you.
So we can move to the next contribution that is entitled Assessment of the Current State of Urban Redevelopment Areas and Their Environmental Impacts, an analysis to support the strategic environmental assessment. The presenter is Francesca Biondi from Politecnico di Torino, and then you will present your co-authors better than me. So,
Sorry.
Everyone, I'm Francesca Biondi from Politecnico di Torino, and this work is carried out with Caterina Caprioli, Giorgio Pappariello, and Elisa Sbardella. And in this presentation, I will talk about the assessment of the current state of the urban abandoned areas and their evaluation about the impact of this transformation. So this is an outline of the presentation, starting from an introduction of the planning process and environmental assessment, followed by the SIA principles. And then I will present the case study and the methodology that we chose and its application to conclude with some implication for planning and the strengths and lacks of this analysis. So when we plan and transform city, it's important to think about the environment in order to conserving it, protecting it, and making sure that it's preserved. And this is to make more sustainable decisions and improve environmental quality. In fact, in last years, the environmental assessment has become a huge topic in urban planning. Because we need to integrate the socio-economic development with environmental protection, and this led to the introduction of the strategic environmental assessment, first at the European level in 2001, and then at the Italian national level in 2006. So the SIA is a process to evaluate the environmental impact of plan and programs. And this process has different stages, starting from the screening to define if the plan requires the SIA, followed by the scoping and drafting of the environmental report to assess potential environmental impacts and compares alternative. And at this point, different type of stakeholders with different knowledge about this topic are involved in order to give their opinion and suggest some review. At this point, the plan can be adopted, and the last phase is the monitoring, where the environmental effects are tracked in order to identify any corrective action. The SIA can have some methodology to support it in order to analyze environmental effect, impact, such as checklist to identify relationship to be analyzed, or networks to identify relation between project activities and components, and or also impact matrices that are table that show the relation between environmental components and project action. And for the SIA, there are also methods that support this process, such as SWOT analysis, multi-criteria analysis, or Deep SIR framework. This process can be used in different stages of the decision-making process. For example, in ex-ante phase, to integrate the sustainability from the beginning of the plan drafting. In the itinerary phase, to check if the initial outcomes are in line with the sustainability goals,
and then in the ex post phase to assess the results achieved in terms of sustainability. For our case study, we are in the ex ante phase of this process, which is about checking the environmental condition of the areas, respecting environmental rules at European, local, and national level, and deciding how to include environment in the plan actions. So our analysis is carried out in a city in the northern of Italy, where there are different abandoned areas or disused areas. Waste transformation is part of a plan that requires the SIA. So our goal was to evaluate the environmental health of these areas and define future priority actions. So the methodology that we chose is divided into parts, and for each part we use the main tool and together with other tools that can support the process. For example, in the first phase, we focus on analyzing the current situation of the areas and identifying factors that describe them. So the main tool was the SWOT analysis with the STIP method and GIS. In the second part, we estimate the potential impact of the environmental impact, the potential impact of the transformation using coaxial matrices and deep SIR framework. So first of all, with the SWOT, we individuated the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and risks, but integrated with the STIP that stands with the social, technology, environmental, economical, and political dimension. And after this integration, we can obtain a table similar to this one, where for each dimension of the STIP, we identified the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and risks. After that, we integrate this part with the spatial dimension in order to see how the dynamic that we identified in the table behave on the areas and where they are located. And for this, we used GIS. In the second part, for the construction of coaxial matrix that are a table with the multiple entries, we also used the deep SIR model, where the drivers are the factors that influence the system, the pressures are factors that influence the environmental system, and the state are changes on the environmental components, while the impact describe how the environmental components are altered by the changes, and the responses are tool or regulation to manage the potential impacts. So applying the methodology, the first outcome is a table similar to this one, where we have for each line the STIP dimension and in each field the SWOT elements. But in order to obtain a more comprehensive understanding of the territory for each STIP dimension, we divided in different subtopics. For example, services, social is divided in culture, demographic, housing, and services. After the filling out the table, we created a map for each SWOT component. For example, for the strengths, we identified the good availability of cultural and social facilities and the presence of the railway station that makes the areas good connected with the metropolitan rail network. For the environmental dimension, there are enough green areas and historical and cultural heritage that make the area interesting and appealing. Then for the weaknesses, we notice the limited availability of healthcare and sports facilities and lack of district heating. but also there are a large number of abandoned areas or industrial sites. And finally, there is a high employment rate and social, and also there are social challenges that make the transformation more complex. As opportunities, we identify the attractiveness for young families by developing new buildings on abandoned areas and also by completing the cycling network. In fact, another opportunity is related to the sustainable mobility. In fact, the area can be can use the European funding for sustainable mobility, and also can improve the commercial services to sustain the local economic development. And at the end, for treats, we notice that there is the risk of increased residential density, but with a lack of evening activities or services in general. And also there are high levels of pollution and for the a little distance from the river, also there is an high hydrological risk. And finally, the dependence of external funding could affect the long-term success of the regeneration process. Then for the second part of this application, we filled out the coaxial matrix with a color-coded scale from positive to negative impact, with colors from green to red. The table in the slide refers to the strategic scenario that is based on the opportunities identified in the SWOT. But we made other two scenarios, and the first one is the inertial and correspond to maintaining the status quo without changes, and the second one is the tendential scenario, which consider the implementation of rules in the actual regulatory plan of the city. So, in conclusion, this study proposes a work methodology to support the SIA, integrating different methodologies and different components. And this integration allows for a more in-depth analysis using a linear and multidisciplinary approach. And also it is useful to support the decision-making process in order to have a shared vision of the transformation. So the strengths of this methodology are its adaptability and replicability. In fact, can be used in different contexts because it not depend by the data, and also the integration with the spatial analysis that make the outcomes understandable also for stakeholders that are not expert. However, it lacks a participatory process that involves stakeholders to give their opinion. Thank you for your attention.
So thank you, Francesca, for the timing for this interesting presentation. I don't know if there is any question from the audience.
Thank you for your contribution. It was really interesting. I think that is also timely because we have, at least in Italy, but not only, like we say, with data center because they are converting industrial sites into data centers, and of course, it's not a properly urban development in generally. And I was wondering if, in your opinion, for part-of development, I mean, in your opinion, it is possible to convert this preliminary tool in a properly tool for public administrations in order to support the decision, because I think that
in the reality, the measure of a municipality, it is quite blind sometimes. And so they really not envisage the potential of their city. So my question is, in your opinion, is too complex to put everything in a tool, also, I don't know, with the support of artificial intelligence or something else, or do you think that is feasible? Because we really need, in my opinion, tools like this, and yeah, I'm interested.
Thank you for the question. Yes, I think that this type of methodology and analysis can be used by public administration because we did our analysis in the first part with data that are public in Italy. I don't know, in other countries maybe not, but are public. So public administration have these and often create this data. And the table are the matrices are filled out with the strategies of the plans that are made by the public administration. So it's very simple to do it without other tools, or artificial intelligence, or expert or technical people.
I have a small curiosity about this slide because this idea of the coaxial matrix somehow is something that we find also in the community impact evaluation and something like this. So it's a curiosity because I faced something similar. How did you evaluate the impacts in the sense? How did you define if an impact is moderate or positive? It was based on your technical assessment. But did you define somehow a quantitative way to differentiate what is moderate, what is high? Because it's challenging somehow.
Subjective, yeah.
Yes, these colors are qualitative more than quantitative. So based on the strategies of this plan or the action that and dynamics that now are in the city, we can feel, but is not definitive because it's qualitative. So this matrix can change after some time.
Okay, thank you.
I don't know if there is
Any question from the audience online? So we can move to the next
Thank you,
contribution.
Francesca. Next up is
Yeah, probably.
We present the work with Elena Tabella and Lirwa White, titled A Questionnaire Evaluation as a Mirror and Device of Interaction in Socio-Technical Workshop. Okay, so the floor is yours, 60 minutes.
Thank you very much. So we are moving from MCDA to a problem solving method. So we're slightly changing the subject. The key idea of this paper is deliberately simple, but methodological, we think important. Questionnaire should not be treated as a neutral tool for measuring workshop outcomes. In socio-technical decision workshop, they also define what participants notice, remember, and report as relevant. So we show you how the questionnaires evolved across a series of workshops supported by problem structuring methods and a specific software, and how this evolution reveals change in interaction regime, especially with the introduction of AI. So problem structuring method, as probably you know, are used when problems are complex, uncertain, and value-laden. as we see very often in urban situations. In this context, a workshop is not just a space where people express their opinion they already have. It is a process where people, tools, model, and facilitation together shape how the problem is understood. This is why evaluation becomes tricky. If what matters is interaction, then the way we evaluate the workshop also matters. And this brings us to questionnaires. They are often treated as simple post-workshop tools, almost neutral forms for collecting feedback. But in this paper, we look at them differently. A questionnaire does not only record what participants think or what they express, it also decides what they are invited to notice: participation, conflict, and value. So the focus of this presentation is not on the answer given by the participants, but on how the questionnaires themselves changed over the time and what those changes tell us about the workshop. The guiding research question is: how does questionnaires evolution mirror and configure changing group interaction in socio-technical decision-making workshops? The double wording is important. The questionnaire is a mirror, as its evolution tells us what the research team progressively consider relevant: values, group dynamics, conflict, AI, control, and so on. But it is also a device. Its questions, scales, and timing help shape how participants reconstruct the workshop. So the theoretical lens is therefore socio-technical and performative. Evaluation does not only observe the phenomenon, it participates in making it legible. The study is qualitative, longitudinal, and comparative. The unit of analysis is not the workshop outcome, and not primarily the participant response. It is an artifact, the questionnaire, that changes over the time. The workshop were conducted with a decision support software for collaborative discussion and deliberation, developed at the Politecnico di Torino by me and then Future, namely MUVAM, which is multi-values appraisal methodology. This allows the author to ask what each version of the questionnaire makes observable. The series of 14 workshops includes different countries, different participants, modes of delivery, and conditions with and without AI. This variation is useful because it makes visible how evaluative needs change as the workshop configuration changes. So briefly, MUVAM can be used in two different modes: in place for on-site collaboration and remote, completely digital, to work simultaneously or in a synchronous way. It is articulated in 4 phases. The shaping and designing are dedicated to structuring and representing the problem to identify decision options. The comparison is devoted to defining criteria for comparing the solution identified. In these phases, all the various actions are the result of a group choice. In the last phase, which is analysis, each participant makes choices individually based on their values and perspective. So the final result is a ranking of the decision schemes identified. Also, the software shows what would have been the ranking of the solution for each individual participant and what is instead the group result. So the research identified a layered data collection processes. Early workshop use structured feedback reports submitted after the event, allowing participants to give a rich and reflective assessment of group dynamics, values, and outcomes. A second group of workshop use shorter and immediate service right at the end of the workshop itself, preserving immediacy when course schedules did not allow delayed reports. The AI-oriented workshop redesigned the reports so that the contribution of AI could be observed by phases And finally, the 14th workshop introduced a more explicit pre and post structure, capturing prior expectation and then perceived changes after the workshop. This progression is central to the argument. The slide reproduces how questions and themes are traced across workshop version. The figure visualizes this evolution in the 14th workshop, which are shown on the horizontal line at the bottom of the slide. Colors identify recurring themes, while solid and dashed lines show whether questions remain stable or change within the same thematic area. This figure makes the central empirical object visible. The questionnaire is not a stable instrument applied repeatedly, but a moving artifact whose structure changes with the workshop ecology. The questionnaire do not evolve to a simple process of progressive refinement. Rather, they are repeatedly respecified because the object of observation itself changes. In the earliest version, the focus is mainly on reconstructing the workshop experience as a whole, how participants perceived the methodology, which values guided the decision, and whether the final outcome reflected their own value. In the later questionnaires, this orientation shifts. The questionnaires start to observe more specific aspects of the group process, how understanding is produced, whether participant feels involved, how the different phases affect the rhythm of the workshop, and whether everyone is able to contribute. In the most recent version of the questionnaire, the focus also extended to AI-supported decision-making. As a first finding, we recognize questionnaire as reflective and value-oriented. Report-based instruments do not primarily measure separate variables. They invite participants to interpret their experience. Participants reflect on group dynamics, value-guided choices, and satisfaction with outcomes. The workshop is observed as a process of collective sense-making. The focus is not on scoring, agreement, influence, or participation, but on how participants organize value around a problematic situation. The questionnaire leaves space for interpretation. Participants narrate how the process unfolded and how they relate with outcomes. Shorter surveys fulfilled immediately shift the focus. They no longer emphasize retrospective interpretation or values. Instead, they capture the immediate workshop experience, better understanding of the problem, feeling involved, group collaboration. This is not just a practical shortening, it changed what becomes visible. The workshop is redefined as an interactional setting where the key dimensions are inclusiveness, participation, understanding, and rhythm of the session. By asking questions that can be answered quickly, the questionnaire foregrounds what participants feel in the moment. It does not simply record impression, it begins to define which dimension of experience counts as relevant. A further finding is that the questionnaire becomes shorter, more structured, and more selective. It shifts from broad group dynamics to specific interactional mechanisms, complexity, conflict, equal contribution. This is again an analytical shift. Disagreement and uncertainty are not only seen as obstacles, but as part of the workshop process. The workshop is observed as a process that can redistribute voice, reshape perception or complexity, and transform disagreement. Participation is not longer just feeling involved, but also whether contributions are equally distributed. So the questionnaire becomes a diagnostic tool for interaction. The strongest transformation occurs with the introduction of generative AI in the workshop. The questionnaire no longer serves only group interaction, but how interaction changes when AI becomes part of the process. It focuses on AI contribution to the methodology, effects on group dynamics, quality of outputs, and interaction with software, prompts, and responses. This marks a shift from human workshop supported by a method to an hybrid assemblage. Agency is distributed across people, interfaces, AI outputs, and procedural sequence. In some cases, the questionnaire also becomes archival, documenting prompts, answer, and screenshot of the human-AI interaction. Finally, the AI-related phase further decomposes the workshop into phases, functions, and variables. Unlike earlier questionnaires, it no longer treats the process as a whole. The later pre-post questionnaire break the process down systematically. In this sense, the questionnaire is not just a mirror of the interaction, it helps make human-AI interaction legible through specific categories such as contribution, influence, speed, trade-off, and human control. Across the questionnaire corpus, four overlapping regimes of observation can be identified. The first is a reflective value regime focused on participant values, choices, and overall outcomes. The second is an in situ interaction regime centered on immediate perception of understanding, involvement, and group dynamics. The third is a complexity conflict regime, which highlights disagreement, complexity, and the distribution of participation. Finally, the fourth is an instrumented hybrid regime where digital tools and AI become part of the interaction process. Although these regimes overlap, their relative importance changes over time, reflecting shift in both workshop design and valuation priorities. As a result, questionnaires do not just record changes in workshop, they actively shape what is considered relevant interaction and how it can be understood. This reflects a broader transition from workshop as space of collective sense-making to social technical system where interaction is formalized and shared between human and technological actors. The questionnaire is not external to the intervention, it shapes how the workshop is later understood. Designing a questionnaire is therefore a strategic choice. Different instruments make different forms of knowledge visible. Methodologically, the paper treats questionnaire evolution as empirical material. The practical implication is clear. Questionnaires should not be administrative afterthought, but tools aligned with the kind of interaction researchers want to observe, especially when AI enters into the decision process. To conclude, the main takeaway is that questionnaires are part of the intervention, not just a final administrative step. Their design select what counts as relevant interaction. First, values and collective sense-making, then participation and conflict, and finally, the distributed agency of human AI setting. This is why questionnaire design should be treated as strategic methodological choice. Thank you.
Okay, so for your very interesting presentation, methodology. There is a question from the audience. Okay, Andrea?
No, thank you because it's really interesting. I was wondering, in reality, not studies I'm wrong, in a co-creation process, for example, I need some kind of questionnaire to co-design with people with citizens. But at the same time, I can get your methodology, in parallel and try to integrate to the traditional, let me see. I was wondering if, for example, from your questionnaire results, I see that there is a low perceived inclusion, for example, at that point. In which point I can, and so I realized that there is a problem in the process. Where can I use, in what phase can I use this result to ameliorate what I'm doing? I don't know if I yeah.
You are referring about the questionnaire or about the workshop per se? Because it's not clear to me if you said there is a problem of inclusion, is something that happened during the workshop. So I realized that not everybody is allowed to express his voice or her voice, or I'm realizing that I'm not observing this phenomenon.
Oh well, both. I was thinking by
Okay. Okay, perfect. For us, it was very important because this workshop that we were serving, it's a workshop that I'm doing. It's several years that I'm doing it with the software that I developed, so I know it by heart. So and then I realized that I was observing specific aspects of the workshop according to the software mainly, because I knew how the software functions, my software move. So I was expecting specific interaction among people and during the different phases and so on. So the first observation with the first question was with something taken for granted. So I knew that something was going to happen. And then I realized that something new was happening because of the answer of the questionnaire and because of this observation of the workshop. Because I have to tell you, I'm observing the workshop in many ways. So we are recording, we are looking at the outcome, and so we are analyzing the outcome. So it was I realized that something was shifting, and so I adapt also the question in order to observe new phenomenon. So you look at the workshop and you see that something is going on because you are triangulated the different outcome and observation, and so you change the questionnaire. So this is why it was important, because it was a longitudinal study. As I said, we observed 14 questionnaire in I don't remember, we look at it in Italy, France, Albania, Slovakia, and they were in English, French, Italian, and so very different court. It was very, very vast, the situation. So first of all, the realization that something was changing, and also the introduction of AI. The introduction of AI was disruptive. So we saw them, we wanted to see how they interacted. And also in this, because I'm a very structured person, so at the beginning I said, no, you use the AI in this way, and I'm observing you in this way. And then I realized that it was stupid because they can use the AI as they want, and I am observing how they use it. So it was much more interesting. So there is no specific answer to your question, not for the first, not for the second one. But obviously, along the time, you realize that when it's better to change some portion of the questionnaire, and we move some question, we adapt the question, and so on.
Thank you.
Okay.
I have another question. Thank you for this very inspiring presentation. I liked it a lot. I don't know if you are thinking about it, or maybe something that you read in the preliminary studies for this research, because working with sociologists, anthropologists, they always give an high importance to the way in which we deliver questions in terms of language.
Mm-hmm.
So I was thinking, I wanted to ask if are you thinking about also testing the different interaction opportunity related to deliver one specific kind of questionnaire with different formal language, to see if also the language can somehow affect the interaction possibilities in the questionnaire.
I see what you mean, but to be honest, for instance, I did several times this workshop at our PhD course, which is international. So I had students from everywhere. And some of the students, for instance, were Chinese, they translate even the software in Chinese. So clearly, I don't have the nuances of other languages.
Yes.
And so in international setting, it was just English, but we test also with the English author, so we try to look with them if the word were correctly. But and I did also in French. I'm good in French, but obviously not good enough as a French person. So actually, we didn't do this because only in few moments we did it in Italian, which is our own with Italian people.
Yes.
So clearly, probably we lost something. But I think at the same time, we are all lost now in the same situation that, that whatever you are proposing could be translated by someone that is not understanding, and you hope that they perceive in a correct way. So maybe we lost something.
Oh, yeah, the idea is that maybe, of course, as you say, for in Italy, also it depends on the kind of stakeholder you are interacting with, because it's a PhD student.
It's another
topic.
level, yeah.
It's a citizen of a small village. It's another topic.
No, it was just an academic situation.
Okay.
And sometimes we also provide, the definition. For instance, if I'm asking about values, I give you what is the definition for me about values. But it's a very academic perspective.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Okay.
So we can move to the next presentation, that is entitled Integrating SG plus metrics into urban green infrastructure, a comprehensive sustainability rating framework. The presenter is Federico Dell'Anna from Politecnico di Torino, but you know him. And so I leave the floor to Federico.
Okay.
So you have 15 minutes, you know?
I know. Sorry. Plus. Yeah. Okay. Okay, so good morning again, everyone. Today's presentation is the result of the master thesis of Mustafa Erkut. The thesis titled Integrating the ESG plus the metric urban green infrastructure and comprehensive sustainability rating framework. Particularly, we proposed a rating system that is a multi-criteria analysis in order to support the management of the urban green infrastructure. So we are not talking about an exam evaluation, okay, but in itinerary evaluation in order to verify if the project is aligned with, for example, with the initial objective or goals of the project. So this is the outline of the presentation. So first I will present the background of the research gap, then I present the research objective, the methodology, the structure of the model called the GSTAM. After that, I explain the value function, the weighting process that we used for structure the multi-criteria analysis, and I introduced the 3 case studies that we used for testing this model. And finally, the results and the conclusion. So let's start with the background, the urban green infrastructure, improve what we know, the environmental quality of our cities, the quality of the life of citizens. We have a lot of sustainability assessment scheme, like that are basically used to evaluate the buildings. Less experience we have in terms of district or urban scale, but we have some examples that we can take in consideration. On the other side, we identify some research gaps. So, as I said before, basically this scheme are just for evaluating urban infrastructure or the quality of the districts in terms of services, for example, but without, but do not exist, to our knowledge, a model to evaluate to support the decision process in the management of the urban infrastructure. Another gap that we identify is a missing of the ESG dimensions in this scheme of evaluation. And in our study in our model, we try to integrate this dimension by adding also not just considering the environmental, social, governance dimension, but also integrating the economic one. For this reason, you can see the plus beside the ESG. Okay, so why we would like to integrate the ESG, as I said before, because this integration doesn't exist, and we want to offer the shared vocabulary, okay, that are very common in other fields of education, like financing and investors. And then we want to make closer the decision support system of this kind of stakeholder with the public authorities. So in particular, we set a target number for the criteria that we want to include in the model, 12 criteria, 4 dimensions. We use the normalization in order to aggregate the score, the performance of all the criteria considered in the model. We use the weighted, the smarter approach in order to weight the criteria and for integrating all the information and calculate and single index, synthetic index, we use the multi-attribute value here in order to obtain this sustainability score, because from 0 to 1, where 0 means for sustainability, 1 the maximum value over the sustainability. So the methodological framework is based on three main phases. The first one, we found the framework design. In particular, we reviewed the existing sustainability assessment frameworks that I mentioned before. We select the ESG dimensions and criteria, in particular consulting the literature review, the academic literature review, and we define the 12 measurable indicators, very useful in order to take into consideration the management of this infrastructure. In the phase one, last point, we identify the data sources useful and the performance thresholds in order to define the value function in the phase number 2. In particular, in the phase number 2, after the identification of the criteria, we validated this according with the according opinion of a set of experts. So we involved a panel of experts and that validated the criteria and give us also the weights of the different indicators in the phase number 3, we assess and calculated the aggregated index according to the approaches I mentioned before. So in this slide, you can see the criteria that we have selected from the literature review according to the 4 dimensions that we would like to include in more: environment, social, economic, and governance. For each criterion, we identify the unit of measure. Okay, and as you see, most we have identified a specific unit measure according to the criterion considered. Some criteria are quantitative, some are based on qualitative scales, others to a scoring evaluation. So the following step was the creation of the value functions in order to normalize the score and to allow the aggregation of the different indicators given in the. So here you can see, for example, some example, like for example, the renewable energy sources integration. Okay, in the x-axis you can see the raw data, and the y-axis you can see the normalized value. The expert help us also to define the different thresholds, okay, that give the shape of each value function, and that found the correlation between the raw data and the normalized data. Other value function are based also to other schemes that was already applied in the field, like for example the lead detection. This other slide you can see other set of of indicators used in the model based on a more discrete scale. Okay, without a not continuous line because they are just based on scoring. Okay. So in the next step, we translate the opinion of the experts about the importance of the criteria in weights in order to integrate them in the evaluation. So basically, we use the smarter method. Okay, these are very common in our application. In particular, in this specific approach, the expert rank the indicators from the least to the most important, and tables that are defined by Baron and Barrett provide us the normalized score to use in the evaluation. Okay, these avoid, for example, some problem of consistency in evaluation because the final score of the weights are already given just starting from the ranking of the indicator. Okay. And this overcomes, for example, the problem that can arise with that approach, like, for example, the HP. So after we fix the model and the indicators and the weights, we tested this the model to 3 real case studies. We selected basically 3 international case studies in order to test the model in different contexts, okay, because all the data are very easy to collect. The first one is the Cheongjin-cheon stream restoration in Seoul, in the South Korea, a major urban regeneration project that restored the historic stream by demolition highway. The second is the High Line in New York. It's very known. The large-scale use of an elevated rail line into a multifunctional urban park. And further, the Madrid Rio in Madrid, Spain. It is the ecological conversion of the Manzanares sideway corridor into a riverfront green park. So we collected all the information by consulting, for example, reports that are provided by the public authority of the different cities. And in this slide, you can see the primary results that we found from the application of the model. So in particular, here you can see the results of the synthetic indicators. Okay, so the aggregated score considering all the criteria used in the evaluation. So from these results, you can see, for example, that the case study in South Korea achieved the highest score, okay, due to the strong economic and environmental performance. But we will see after when we will see the disaggregated score. The Madrid Rio ranks the second with the strongest social performance, and the happy line ranks the third position due to the lower environmental and economic score. So I just want to remark that this tool is not useful for rank alternatives, okay, but it remains a rating framework, like the other tools that I mentioned before, like LEAD, BRIM, and so on. So now let's look at the dimension-based results in more detail. According to the 4 dimensions, you can see the normalized score achieved by each case study. In particular, you can compare the performance of the different case study according to the different dimensions. So, if you look, for example, to the environmental dimension, you can see that the South Korea case study get the best results in terms of renewable energy sources, potable water reduction, climate adaptation, and resilience. The Madrid Rio obtained the bigger score in terms of social dimension. Again, the South Korea case study obtained the best score in economic dimension in terms of life cycle cost efficiency, operational cost reduction, and property value increase. And about the governance, we don't have a winner because the results are very stable across all the group. So you can see that starting from this information, the decision maker can understand what are, for example, the aspects to be aware for during the management of the project. So to conclude, let's me to summarize the outcome of the study. Our key contribution are so we developed this framework for urban green infrastructure based on integrity analysis and integrating the ESG dimension plus the economic aspects that are not considered in this kind of assessment model. We combine the multi-attribute value theory with the SMART approach in order to support transparent decision making, okay, and make informed decision. And we validated this framework using these three international case studies. So, like future perspective, we would like to apply this framework to additional case study to refine the normalization threshold with more sophisticated approaches that we already know, and to evaluate alternative weighting scenario in order to also verify the robustness of the results. So I finish it. So thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Federico. Before I start, there are many questions from the audience also online. If you want to make a question, you can raise your virtual hand. So
Yeah, for this.
we start with Isabella. Yes.
I have a curiosity, because I'm sorry. You said that the I-Line it's a had a low economic score, which is quite surprising to me because I know that it had a massive effect on the real estate market in that area, and it's also the most visited monument in New York. So clearly, it has an impact, which is important. So I was have some question about. I'm wondering if the three indicators in the cluster have the same weight, so life cost, efficiency, operational cost.
No.
No. Okay. And also, I didn't understand. Operational cost reduction is compared to what? To the previous situation reduction about what?
Okay, so I can explain. So about the first question, the performance of the highlight. So the results that you can see here is based on the records that we identify online. Okay, and basically according to the results, the value function that was defined by the expert with also the expert, the result give this result. You mentioned before that the property value increase is one of the most big impacts of the highline. And in this model, we consider this like a benefit. So this is already included in the model. But we are facing some problems with this because the property value increase can generate other phenomena on the population.
Yes, it was my question. It's a cost or it's a benefit?
Yeah.
Because clashes with the social part.
Yes, I'm a capitalist. I thought it was.
No. And we are discussing how to treat this in specific indicator. Okay. So to reply to your specific question about the property value increase, we have to see in detail the results about this specific indicator that I don't have in this presentation.
It's just an alert because it's written everywhere that it has this impact. So just to.
Yeah, but I think that you have an high cost, then you have no direct revenues. They are indirect in the sense that maybe the value of the properties, the surrounding properties have increased. But from if we look at a financial perspective, so financial cost, financial revenues, you have maybe a very high cost, no direct revenue. So I don't know.
Yes, but you are neglecting the iconicity also of this element.
Yes, from an economic perspective, of course, it has a value.
But it's not effective because there are so many tourists that they are
Yes,
just because of that.
I'm comparing.
Yeah,
with-
It's the same visitor
And visitor intensity.
Yeah, it's the same because it's higher or is positive or negative for social impact, no? Because over tourism is negative.
For tourism, for the city, for sure, it is very important. It is the positive. So, so for this reason, we are discussing how to treat this aspect or to add other indicators.
Yeah.
Okay, in order to compensate the different effects. Yeah. And about the weights of the sub-criteria, we involved the expert also to weights, not just the dimension, but also the sub-criteria.
And the operational cost reduction?
Sorry. Just because we are talking about management. So you have a starting point that is the project realization. Okay. Here you can see reduction because you can apply this tool in, I don't know, 3 years after the project implementation. And you can compare with the baseline scenario. So if you, for example, in the management over the time, you can reduce the operational cost, you can consider this aspect in the model. Okay, because it is not exact evaluation, but is in itinerary. Okay. Yeah.
Thank you.
Andrea?
Yeah, no, thank you for your presentation. It was seeing the indicators. Second question was actually on the property value, but probably you can, I don't know, consider also to put some aspect in the governance that can mediate in some ways value. For example, the social housing or something else when you have this urban regeneration project can mediate the increase, the only increase of property value from a private point of view. But if it is mediated by social housing, in this sense, it is a win-win strategy, no? So, yeah, probably is the relation also between indicators, apart from weight, the different single styles. And no, my question, the first one was on the environment.
Yeah.
Since the green infrastructure, one of the main aims is to increase biodiversity, for example. Biodiversity is included in climate adaptation.
No, we didn't consider any indicator about the biodiversity or biophysics.
And what do you think about, I don't know, the NPVI? I know that is a proxy widely used, but also from an ecological point of view, it is quite robust. I don't know if it's and you have an API for long scale, so it be I don't know for future.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you for your suggestion. So basically, the climate adaptation resilience consider just, for example, the effects on the heat wave. Okay, just this one. But for sure, because for example, collect information about biodiversity can be difficult. It is not so easy. And so we try to structure this framework that is based just to very basic information that are easy for the public authority or anyone else to collect. For this. Yeah.
Being the climate adaptation and resilience, you can include also something about the water runoff reduction, so the water consumption increase. That is very relevant for this kind of infrastructure.
Okay. Thank you. Comunque abbiamo apprezzato la maglietta in pandan con la presentazione.
Yes, it was really, it's really effective.
Thank you. Last one.
The last one on the list. It's the last contribution of this first part of our session is entitled Multidisciplinary Spatial Documentation, Derivatization of Minor Historical Centers, a Systematic Literature Review. The presenter is...
Hi, we are all together. I'm Elisabetta Colucci. Here Mariam Abedi, and there is also Caterina Caprioli, and the presenter will be Mariam Abedi. I will introduce her.
Okay. So if you can share so we can see everything.
I try.
Okay, perfect. If you can, okay.
Like this?
Yes, perfect.
Okay.
You can go. You have 15 minutes. Okay.
Okay, thank you. So just to introduce the group, that's as you mentioned in the title, that's an interdisciplinary work. So we work with Mariam Abedi, that is a master student of architecture and construction. And we are from 3 disciplines. We are also working to set a project together, combining the discipline of real estate and project evaluation, the geomatics one. So you will see also some maps from GIS. And also we will speak about risk and hazard. And for this reason, also Professor Federico Vagnon is involved from the side of applied geology. So I leave the floor to Mariam. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Today I'll be presenting my work. I'll walk you through the context first. From there, I will cover our research question, how we conducted the systematic literature review, and how we organized the references in the thematic pillars. Then I'll talk about the results, and I'll close with where the work is headed next. Our focus is on minor historical centers in the Italian Alps. One of the first challenges we faced is that minor historical center doesn't have a universal definition. To make the research replicable, we created 3 nested operational categories. Small settlements are residential localities that have under 1,000 inhabitants. Small rural settlements are those classified as rural by the European degree of organization typology. And small mountain rural settlements are our main focus, which physically fall inside mountain chains. The map shows how many of these exist across Italy. Using the SMRS classification, we can show why the environmental threat to these settlements is so significant. Many of these small mountain rural settlements heavily intersect with high probability hazard zones, facing persistent threats from floods, landslides, avalanches, and other hazards. As you can see in the map, this is showing the SMRS intersecting with flood hazard zones in Piedmont and Val d'Aosta, and a zoom in Macugnaga region. The key implication here is you cannot plan for repopulation or revitalization without first understanding the hazard exposure of the specific site. The SMRS, and in broader terms, rural alpine territories, are under compounding pressure. First, demographic decline. Many villages have experienced partial or total abandonment. As shown in the chart, the majority of SMRS have less than 50 inhabitants. Second, service reduction. The lack of services causes depopulation. And as population shrinks, the essential services are further withdrawn, which accelerates this cycle. Third, environmental hazards. These settlements are in mountain territories, and as shown in the previous slide, they heavily intersect with hazard zones. This is a constant and growing concern, especially with climate change. Lastly, the post-COVID period brought renewed interest in rural living, but there has been limited systematic tools to actually act on that interest. Here's the paradox. The policy intent is there. Policies like PNRR and the European Rural Vision explicitly support the revitalization of these places, but implementation is fragmented. Execution is indeed challenging. Documentation, hazard assessment, and socioeconomic analysis are more likely to be developed in parallel, which leads to the use of incompatible datasets and frameworks. The fragmentation produces three specific blind spots. Architectural documentation is mostly hazard blind, which means surveys of minor historical centers don't really incorporate climate or geotechnical data. On the other hand, environmental hazard assessment are usually heritage blind. They treat abandoned villages as static points on a map and not living systems. And neither domain links its findings to the socioeconomic realities, which determine whether a place is actually habitable, things like job market proximity or demographic resilience. This leads us to our central question. Which spatial, environmental, and socioeconomic variables do we actually need to assess whether a minor historical center can be re-inhabited? Our approach is to use a systematic literature review to build towards a spatial multi-criteria analysis, or SMCA. The reason why we use SMCA rather than a standard multi-criteria analysis is that space matters. The same indicator, say distance from a hospital, carries a very different weight in a flat rural area versus a high altitude alpine village. And we deliberately move beyond cost-benefit analysis because purely monetary frameworks flatten the rural complexity here. To identify the right variables, we conducted a systematic literature review adapted from the PRISMA protocol. We searched 4 main domains in Scopus covering technical spatial, environmental and hazard exposure, strategic planning, and socioeconomic references. We supplemented these with gray literature, snowballing, and web search. Starting from 114 records, we screened down to 84. It is important to mention that our search strings were calibrated to capture references within the European boundaries using keywords like alpine, and specifically capture Italian references by using keywords like borghi and aree interne. The systematic literature review covered the period from 2000 to present, which is aligned with the evolution of modern GIS and the emergence of major European rural development policies. It included literature in both English and Italian, with a primary focus on the Italian rural alpine context. We organized the 84 references across 7 thematic pillars that together represent what we call the revitalization lifecycle. This taxonomy wasn't arbitrary. It is methodologically aligned with 2 established frameworks, the historic urban landscape approach from UNESCO, which emphasizes integrated and dynamic heritage management, and the multidimensional indicator logic of the Italian SNAI. Together, these gave us the conceptual foundation to move beyond static physical documentation. The first 3 pillars, GIS documentation, hazard exposure, and settlement morphology, established a physical and environmental baseline. Pillars 4 and 5 address strategy and policy, and pillars 6 and 7 evaluate social dynamics and economic viability. Together, they span from the condition of the building fabric to whether people can actually live there long term. Before getting to the result, there is an important step to mention. We scored all 84 references across the 7 pillars on a scale from 0 to 4. 0 meaning the pillar is not mentioned at all, and 4 meaning it is one of the main focuses of the reference. From there, we looked at the references scoring 3 or 4 per pillar and tracked how many pillars each reference scored highly in. And the results are shocking. Only 7% of references score 3 or 4 across 6 or 7 pillars simultaneously. The majority score highly in only 1, 2, or 3 pillars. This confirms that truly integrated operational research on these settlements is essentially absent. The tool that local decision makers actually need does not yet exist. So what does that gap tell us? It tells us exactly what variables are missing from an integrated framework. From the references scoring 3 or 4 across the pillars, we extracted this proposed variable set for a future spatial multi-criteria analysis. What matters here is that all of these indicators can be specialized. For example, from the baseline pillars in the technical spatial domain, we have the physical shell condition with specific indicators ranging from the building decay levels, structural typology, and architectural value and authenticity. These are not exhaustive, but they are just some examples. That's precisely why we need a spatial multi-criteria analysis rather than a normal multi-criteria analysis, because the spatial dimension changes the weight and the meaning of each indicator depending on where you are. The same applies to connectivity, flood zones, distance from service hubs, or any other variable in this set. The power of this framework is that all of these dimensions can be layered and queried together in geographic space. The work is already moving forward in parallel. A colleague on our team is focusing on the SMCA implementation, applying this variable set to a case study in the Italian Alps. My own work is centered on the WebGIS platform, building a multi-scale interface that allows local administrations and non-technical stakeholders to actually visualize and query these outputs without needing specialist tools. The next logical steps beyond that would be the bottom-up data collection through structured interviews with residents and planners, and eventually digital twin interoperability to simulate climate impacts on building level vulnerability in real time. To summarize, our review of 84 multidisciplinary sources confirmed a structural misalignment between documentation, hazard assessment, and policy for minor historical centers. And we have proposed an interdisciplinary SMCA variable set as a first step towards closing that gap. Thank you very much for your attention. We'd be very happy to take any questions.
Okay, thank you, Mariam, for your presentation. It was really interesting. I don't know if there is any question from the audience or online. Okay, but if there are not any question, I have a question for you. I want to know, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. I want to know, maybe I missed it, if in the literature review you consider it only scientific sources from scientific database or also gray sources, what we can call as gray sources, report, or other kind of sources that are not indexed?
Yes, we did. So we had 4 main domains. One was Scopus with 4 search strings. The other is French literature. We focus mainly on the Italian ones because our focus is in Italy. We also did snowballing, which means from the references we found in Scopus, we went to the references and checked backward and forward. And lastly, we did normal web search just to see if we are missing anything.
Yes, perfect. Thank you. Because about this topic, unfortunately, I know that when working in international setting is not so easy, but there are lots of sources that are developed in the discipline of architecture, restoration, and conservation, and unfortunately are in Italian and are.
It's a lot.
Yes, and I suggest you to give a look at the risk charter that is developed by the Ministry of Culture that works on this topic of mapping the risk for all the historical center. And I think that maybe it's something interesting for your research. Then if you want, now I'm working on a research project on this topic. Then if you want any information, feel free to reach me, because I think it's interesting for your kind of research.
Thank you very much, of course.
Okay.
Thank you.
So I don't know if there is another comment. So I think we are a bit late and we came to the end of this first part of our session. I remind you that this is only the first part of our workshop. So we will restart at 2 local time, that is 3 p.m. in Italy. And the session will be chaired by our colleagues Vanessa Sum and Caterina Caprioli. So I thank you for your presence. And I thank my co-chair Federico Dell'Anna. And so we'll see you later.
Thank you so much. Bye bye.
No. Diciamo, io lo uso praticamente per vendere lo uso io, però loro lo vendono, loro sono però se ne può parlare anche di questo.
You know,
Sì, possiamo vedere,
avete fatto all'interno del
no, noi il fatto il poi il fatto noi, cioè io ho trovato due buoni
Se non mi ho visto no, avevo una serie di libri che dicevo, però no, non lo so, in genere dei triennali lo scrivo così. No, dipende dallo studente, sì.
Che si serve?
No, ma infatti, veramente poi dopo, cioè una volta che ti capi, qualcuno di veramente capace. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
See you later.
Yeah, see you.
Thank you, bye.
Bye.
Dai, ieri